It is the year 1181, and the all-powerful leader of the Heike clan, the 64-year-old Lord Kiyomori, is dying. Just a day earlier, he had ordered his son Munemori to launch an expedition to quash the Genji rebellion led by his rival Yoritomo, but now those plans have been put aside, for suddenly his condition has become grave and he has a raging fever. In recent weeks, Kiyomori has been plagued again by nightmares and wonders if he has been cursed. Racked by his visions and under pressure from his family and the imperial court, Kiyomori has agreed to move the nation's capital back to its old location, Heiankyo, modern-day Kyoto. Now rumors are spreading throughout the capital about the Heike Lord's condition. It is said that Kiyomori has refused food and that his body burns like fire. Another report says that the heat from his fever is so unbearable that no one can approach his body. When he steps into a stone basin filled with holy water, says another, the water bubbles furiously and black smoke fills the room. The reason is clear, the people say. This is divine punishment for Kiyomori's destruction of Nara's Todaiji temple and the great bronze statue of the Buddha. The Heike family offer donations to all the holy temples and shrines, gold and silver, saddles and armor, but it makes no difference. So the leading Heike clansmen gather at Kiyomori's bedside, seeking any sign of hope. His wife, Tokiko, the Lady Ni, kneels by his side and wipes sweat from his fevered brow. But Kiyomori does not respond, because he is in the midst of a fevered dream. He has a vision of a boy being forced to kneel before him. At his neck, Kiyomori holds the tip of a long sword. It is the sword Higekiri, the ancient Genji heirloom. The boy looks up without fear and glares at him, his eyes burning red. Then, suddenly, the boy's face turns to bronze. It is the face of the great Buddha statue at Todaiji Temple, but now the face is on fire, and as Kiyomori watches in horror, the head melts before his eyes until all he sees is a skull with a gaping mouth, and once again he hears a voice.
"We're coming for you."
Ah! Tokiko clasps her husband's arm and tries to wake him from his fever. "My lord!" "Tokiko!" Kiyomori opens his eyes wide in terror. "Tokiko, I saw him again, Yoshitomo's child. And I heard the voice. It said they are coming for me." "My lord, it was just a dream." "No," he grabs the sleeve of her kimono. "The Heike are cursed because of what I have done." "Nonsense, my love. Our family must defend itself after I am gone. Otherwise it will not survive. There is a great threat to us," he says. "Someone I should have destroyed years ago." Kiyomori stretches out a trembling hand and points to the sword that rests close to his bedside. "Tokiko, there is only one thing I still desire," he says. "I will not rest until I have it." "What is it?" she says. "Tell me." Kiyomori leans to whisper his last words in her ear. Later that morning, the Lady Ni stands outside in the courtyard and addresses the assembled Heike clansmen. "Lord Kiyomori is dead," she announces, and there are murmurs throughout the crowd. "He demands that we defend the Heike legacy and put down any who would stand in our way. Do not build me temples or pagodas in my honor," he said. "Do not give pious prayers after I am gone. No, there is only one thing I request," he said before he died. "One thing that I demand. Bring me the head of the Genji leader Yoritomo and place it on my tomb." The proud do not endure. They are like a dream on a spring night. The mighty fall at last. They are as dust before the wind. Kiyomori's funeral pyre was lit at Otagi Temple in the western mountains of the capital. The Heike Lord's fame had once resounded the length of Japan. Now he was just smoke in the air. The Heike may have lost their leader, but the war that he had ignited between the Heike clan and the Genji is only just beginning. On the 10th day of the 3rd month of 1181, Kiyomori's sons launch an attack at a site called Tsunomata, east of the capital. Yoritomo's uncle, Yukie, is quickly defeated by Taira no Tomomori, Kiyomori's 4th son, who will prove himself to be a formidable military leader after the death of his father. But now, as the months pass, there is an uneasy truce. The Heike clan, still reeling from the loss of their figurehead, seek to re-establish their control over the capital. Meanwhile, to the east, in Kamakura, Yoritomo continues to build his support. With the government in chaos and no strong leadership in the capital, the country begins to fall apart. As we enter the year 1182, famine spreads throughout the land and the food shortages become so serious that neither side can attempt a long-distance campaign. According to an account left by a Buddhist monk named Chome, the price of grain rises so much that it is now more valuable than gold. And so both sides wait it out, the Genji in the east, the Heike in the west, waiting for an opportunity to make the first move. The unofficial truce gives Yoritomo the chance to strengthen his ties with the local samurai and focus on domestic affairs. The rest of his time he passes on hunting expeditions, horsemanship, archery contests, drinking games, and other leisurely pursuits. In the spring of 1182, Yoritomo announces that his wife Masako is with child. It is a cause for rejoicing, but all is not well in their relationship. For Yoritomo may be faithful to his samurai clansmen, but less so to his pregnant wife. One day he instructs his secretary, a man by the name of Fujiwara Hirotsuna, to act as a go-between and to write a love letter to the widow of Akugenda, Yoritomo's elder brother who had died some years before. Anxious to avoid a scandal, though, the young woman instead reports these amorous advances to her father, who quickly gives her away in marriage to another man. Frustrated but undeterred, a couple of months later, Yoritomo begins courting another woman named Kizen, and he awards her quarters close by so he can visit without arousing public attention. In September, his wife Masako delivers her child, a son named Yorie, who many years from now will become Japan's second shogun. Again, there is much rejoicing in the Kenji camp, but the mood changes as soon as Masako learns of her husband's infidelity. She hears reports that Yoritomo's mistress, Kizen, is now residing at the house of Yoritomo's secretary, Hirotsuna, and she immediately orders one of her attendants to burn down the house. Fortunately, both Hirotsuna and Kizen are able to escape in time, but the house is left a smouldering ruin. Yoritomo realizes he needs to intercede before the situation gets worse, for he is now caught between a furious wife, a terrified mistress, and a distraught secretary who has just seen his house burned down. So he summons the attendant and rebukes him for his act. "It was most praiseworthy of you to have carried out her ladyship's orders," he says. "But why did you not inform me first of what she intended to do?" The attendant pleads for forgiveness and is sent away. Yoritomo's secretary, Hirotsuna, is banished to Totomi province at the insistence of Masako, while Yoritomo's mistress, Kizen, is relocated to another residence, where she lives in great fear of incurring her ladyship's displeasure. For now, the domestic crisis appears to be over, and on the surface at least, Yoritomo and Masako renew their contented life together as they raise their newborn son. But the experience has taught Yoritomo not to underestimate the formidable Masako, and never again would he take his wife for granted. During this period of truce, one man has taken advantage of the standoff between East and West. His name is Kiso Yoshinaka, and he is a cousin of Yoritomo, and at this point he becomes one of the key figures in our story. For the last few years, Kiso has been busy expanding his influence in the central highlands of Japan to the northeast of the capital, where he is known as Master of the Eastern Mountain. There he gathers support from the local fiefdoms and establishes his base in the mountainous fortress of Yoda. The Heike watch the rise of Kiso with growing alarm, as the lands he controls in Shinano province are much closer to the capital than Yoritomo's in distant Kamakura. Deciding he is a threat that can no longer be ignored, the Heike's new leader, Kiyomori's eldest son, Munemori, orders a local governor to attack Kiso's forces. In the late summer of 1182, the governor advances against Kiso with 40,000 men. Kiso races from the fortress of Yoda, with just 3,000 and meets the Heike forces at Yoritomo River. But what the Heike don't yet appreciate is that Kiso is a master tactician, and he will use whatever trick or strategy that gives him an advantage. Kiso divides his small army into 7 parties, each bearing a red flag, the banner of the Heike clan. When the Heike see these troops emerging over the rocks and outer valleys, they set up a shout of joy, thinking that reinforcements have arrived. But as the 7 forces approach, at a signal from Kiso, they draw together into one and, throwing away their red banners, suddenly replace them with white. Panic seizes the Heike, realizing they have been deceived. Their panic worsens when they hear reports of a demonic woman leading the advancing troops, a fierce female samurai who has laid waste to all who stand in her path. As the tale of the Heike recounts, by the end of the Battle of Yoritomo River, few of the governor's forces survived, far more were slain. Reports of Kiso's growing power eventually reach Yoritomo in Kamakura. He worries now there is a good chance that Kiso will launch his own attack on the capital along the Hokurikudo, a throughway along the Sea of Japan that leads from the mountains down to the capital. If Kiso reaches the capital first, then all of Yoritomo's patient preparations may be for nothing. So in the spring of 1183, Yoritomo decides to lead a force of several thousand horsemen into the mountains of Shinano to confront Kiso Yoshinaka, to find out his intentions once and for all. There are no records of what exactly occurred in the one and only meeting between these two estranged cousins, but we can at least imagine what their encounter might have been like. Chilled and wet after leading their horsemen on a long expedition into the mountains, Yoritomo finally arrives at the fortress of Yoda. Together with his half-brother, the 23-year-old Yoshitsune, and a small group of attendants, he is escorted into the reception hall. At the far end of the hall, they see a well-built man with broad shoulders, a thick beard, and clad in a coat made of bearskin. The visitors can see that he is finishing his meal, and they hear the loud crunching of fish bones. Next to him is a young woman with striking eyes and short-cropped dark hair, dressed in armor, and on the other side stands a gaunt older man, presumably the man's bodyguard, who follows the visitor's movements with narrow, wary eyes. The guests are invited to sit before their host, but the man in the bearskin doesn't even look up. He just keeps ripping the flesh off what appears to be a pile of fish and lamprey eels. Finally, he wipes a greasy hand across his mouth and looks up. "Ah, our guests from the east." He gazes at the man at the front of the entourage. "My cousin, Yoritomo, Lord of Kamakura. The first time we have met, and..." He points his fishbone at Yoritomo's companion. "Who's this?" "This is my younger half-brother, Yoshitsune, called Kuro. We thank you for your hospitality, Yoshinaka." The young samurai beside Yoritomo bows. "I am honored to meet you, cousin." "Ah, Ushiwaka, the kid that Kiyomori exiled to Kurama." Kiso turns to the woman at his side. What do you think, Tomoe? We don't often get such a pretty-faced young man like this out here." The woman smiles. "I thought he'd look more like one of the Tengu goblins who trained him." Yoshitsune forces a smile and Kiso laughs. "Ha! But come, he says. "We must welcome our guests." He instructs his attendants to pour cups of sake for Yoritomo's men. Yoritomo picks up his cup and is about to drink when Yoshitsune puts his hand on his arm. "Let me, brother." Yoshitsune smells the cup and sips it. Then after a few seconds he nods. Yoritomo sips gingerly. Kiso smiles at his nervous guests, then gulps down his cup of sake in one go and releases a huge belch. "Ha! You don't trust me much, do you, cousin?" "Well, why should you? After all, our families have had some bad blood in the past." Yoritomo is about to speak, but Kiso turns again to his female companion. "Have I told you, Tomoe, of how close Yoritomo and I are?" "Oh, yeah, we go way back. You see, Yoritomo's father, the great Genji leader Minamoto no Yoshitomo, was, in fact, quite a jealous and insecure man. And he was worried that the Seiwa Genji inheritance might be denied him by our grandfather, who didn't trust him, and that it might pass to my father instead." Yoritomo starts to look uncomfortable because he knows where this story is headed, but he remains silent as Kiso carries on. "So you know what he did, Tomoe, this noble father of Yoritomo?" He had his eldest son, so that would be your big brother Akugenda Yoritomo, who I believe is sadly no longer with us, to ride out with his men, sneak into my father's camp at Okura, where he attacked and murdered my father. What a hero! I would have been killed too, you see. I was an infant at the time, if I hadn't been smuggled away into the mountains of Kiso, and that's where I've been ever since, Yoritomo. Raised like a lone wolf by the people here, hiding from my own family, growing up with my foster brother here, Kanehiro. The gaunt, silent figure to his side stares down at Yoritomo with cold eyes. So, Yoritomo, that's why I call myself Kiso Yoshinaka, not Minamoto. The Genji family name means nothing to me. There is silence in the room. Yoshinaka takes another fish, tears at the flesh, and spits out the bones. You see, I may despise the Heike, Yoritomo, but it's your family that I can never forgive. By now, several of Yoritomo's retainers are looking around at Kiso's men, who block each of the exits. Yoritomo bows his head low to the ground. His brother, Yoshitsune, notices a bead of sweat drop from his brow to the floor. Cousin Yoshinaka, says Yoritomo, still facing the ground, I can only apologize for what happened in the past. I still do not believe that my father intended for your father to be killed. My elder brother was hot-headed, I know. The skirmish must have gotten out of hand and... Oh, come on, Yoritomo, says Kiso. They knew what they were doing. Yoritomo looks up and persists. Look, Yoshinaka, the events you describe happened almost 3 decades ago, when both of us were infants. We cannot surely be held to account for the misdeeds of the past, especially when there is a more immediate threat to contend with. And, besides, both my father and my elder brother paid a very heavy price during the Heiji rebellion against Kiyomori. Ah, that's true, Yoshinaka sits back and nods. You know, executing your elder brother was probably the one good thing that Kiyomori ever did in his wretched life. Oh, apart from ordering the death of your father. In both of those, he did everyone a great service, don't you think? Maybe when I get to the capital, I should thank Kiyomori's sons, before I kill them. During this taunt, Yoritomo bites his lip and says nothing, but his younger brother Yoshitsune begins to rise. The lady Tomoe notices and immediately steps forward to face him. Kiso glances at Yoshitsune. Hey, kid, I wouldn't trifle with my friend here, Tomoe. You know, at Yokota River, she took the heads of 7 Heike warriors. Yoshitsune snorts, but Tomoe flashes a smile as they stand almost face to face. I can show you the heads if you like, boy, she says. By the way, how many battles have you fought? Yoshitsune reddens, pauses, and then turns back to Kiso. Why do you think you can reach the capital? The Heike will destroy you before you even get close. Why do you think you can take them on? Kiso sits back and smiles. Why? All right, kid. I'll give you 3 reasons. 1, Kiyomori is dead, and his son, Munimori, is an idiot. 2, Munimori may have the numbers, but his troops aren't reliable. Most are conscripts from the farms, where people are dying of hunger, and they'll run away at the first sign of threat. Just as they did for you at Fuji River, Yoritomo. Although I did hear you had the help of some geese or ducks. Wow, no wonder the Heike fled. That must have been terrifying. Yoritomo ignores the snub as Kiso turns back to Yoshitsune. And 3, if I can lure the Heike out here, into the mountains, they'll be in territory I know like the back of my hand. I'll wait for them, I'll draw them out, and then I'll crush them. And after that, I'll proceed to the capital, down the Hokurikudo Pass. Yoshitsune smiles and shakes his head. Ah, Kiso laughs. Your little half-brother doesn't seem convinced, Yoritomo. The lady Tomoe leans forward to whisper in Yoshitsune's ear. Shall we place a bet, boy? Who can reach the capital first? My lover or your brother? At this point, Yoritomo is watching the exchange become tense and realizes it is time to cut to the chase. Look, cousin Yoshinaka, I acknowledge you have shown great skill and bravery, and with the lady Tomoe here have proven your valor. You have taken up Prince Mochihido's call admirably, but your resources are limited. I control the 8 provinces of the eastern lowlands, with all the clans of the east. I am the direct heir of the Seiwa Genji line, and if I am to lead the Genji to victory against the Heike, it must be with your support. His cousin sits back and begins eating another lamprey eel. And if I don't pledge my support? Yoritomo stands and faces him directly. Although he's shorter than his cousin, he stands his ground. Then, As well as facing the Heike coming at you from the west, cousin, bear in mind you will also have my army gathering in the east. Would you really want to be in that situation? There is a long silence as the two men stare at each other. Warriors on both sides stand ready to draw their weapons at the first signal. Finally, Kiso shrugs. So, what do you want? I'm not going to simply join your army as a vassal, cousin. I will follow my own path. I understand that, Yoshinaka, but in return I need some reassurance that we will remain allies and not enemies. Kiso tosses the remains of his fish aside. Reassurance? An offer of one of your family to come back with us to Kamakura. Lady Tomoe looks at Kiso with alarm, but Kiso's expression remains impassive. He grunts. A hostage? And who do you propose? Yoritomo realizes this is his chance, but it is a risk. Your son, Yoshitaka. He is, I believe, in his 11th year, and his mother is no longer alive. My wife, Masako, will take care of him. And, perhaps, in the future, he may be a good choice in marriage for our own daughter, Ohime, when, of course, they are of suitable age. Kiso strokes his beard and looks thoughtful. He exchanges glances with the warrior Kanehira next to him, whose expression is unreadable. Kiso suddenly rises from his chair and claps his hands. I will consider. Guests from Kamakura, please make yourself at home. Kiso nods to his men standing by the exits, and they move aside. After Yoritomo and his entourage leave, the Lady Tomoe approaches Kiso, who holds up his hand. Don't worry, Tomoe. This could be useful. If one day Yoshitaka becomes Yoritomo's son-in-law... But Yoritomo already has a son. Yes, but if something were to happen to him, then... But how can you trust him after what his father did to your family? Well, he's a smarter man than his father, Tomoe. Besides, the next few months will be harsh. And if we do lose to the Heike, my son will be safer in the east than he will be here. Tomoe shakes her head. Yoritomo may keep his word, I don't know, but I don't like his brother. That kid? Yoshitsune? Don't worry about him. He's all mouth. He'll never amount to anything. How the historic meeting between the two Genji cousins really went, we'll never know for sure, but what we do know is that Kiso Yoshinaka did send his son back with Yoritomo, essentially as a hostage, but perhaps also for his son's own welfare, because Kiso knows that the Heike will soon be setting their sights on his home base in the mountains. And sure enough, at 8 a.m., the hour of the dragon, on the 11th day of the 4th month, a huge force of more than 100,000 troops, led by Kiyomori's grandson, Koremori, sets out from the capital, heading northeast into the central highlands to destroy Kiso Yoshinaka's uprising. It is the largest army the capital has ever seen. The first opposition the Heike face is at the fort of Hyuchi, a Minamoto outpost with a stockade fortress surrounded by soaring crags and towering peaks. Before the fort is a wide lake which it seems can only be crossed by boat, so the Heike pause on the east side of the lake. Among the defenders of the fort is an abbot named Saime, who secretly sympathizes with the Heike. Sneaking out of the fort at dusk and skirting the foot of the mountains, he attaches a message to the bulb of a whistling arrow and shoots it into the Heike camp. The lake is man-made, he informs the Heike. It is just a mountain torrent, dammed. Downstream there is a weir made of fallen trees. Send your foot soldiers tonight to dismantle the dam, and the water will drain away. Cross without delay. I will support you with my arrows from the enemy's rear. Koremori immediately sends out soldiers to break the dam, and within hours, what had once been a broad lake swiftly empties to reveal a mountain stream. Saime's betrayal has literally opened the floodgates, and the Heike army crosses in the early morning light. The fort garrison fights back, but the Heike numbers are overwhelming, and the defenders have to retreat into the mountains. The Heike follow, putting to the torch a series of forts one after the other. Their onslaught appears irresistible. On the 8th day of the 5th month, the Heike forces gather at Shinohara and prepare to continue their advance towards Yoshinaka via a mountain pass called Kurikawa. Far away in the eastern capital, Yoritomo waits to see who will prevail in this momentous encounter, as his cousin Kiso Yoshinaka prepares to face the full weight of the Heike army. Heike and Genji are about to meet in the first great all-out clash of the Genpei War, a battle that will have a huge impact on the final outcome. Who will emerge as victor? In the next episode, Genji and Heike come face to face in one of the greatest clashes of medieval Japan, the Battle of Kurikawa Pass.